Going over the coolest nin abilities in Hunter x Hunter. And shout out to Carson for the support, and thanks for allowing me some honorable mentions because I got way more than 10 here. Alright, so as is the case when I give these more opinion-based lists, there's no real particular order in my mind in terms of like number one most cool versus like number four most cool, so I'm not going to actually give a ranking. These just as a whole are what I think are the most interesting and coolest techniques in Hunter x Hunter. But that's not to say that they're the strongest necessarily, so you might be like, whoa, I can't believe he didn't talk about this, that, or the other ability, because we're purely going on like cool factor or cool like design in terms of world building. At least that's what I'm basing it on. But if you are interested in what I think are the strongest and most versatile techniques, I put out a video on that a couple days ago. But anyways, let's get into it. And first and foremost, Greed Island, which I know it's not technically an ability. It's, a group of them together came up with this, but I think it's the single coolest thing in the manga so far that we've seen born of Nin, so I just had to include it. Next up, I gotta go with the Kakin Seed Urn Ritual. This thing is so cool, and I think it's fair to say that it is technically the first king of Kakin's Nin ability. We know that he was a conjurer and he conjured the Seed Urn, right? And this is probably a bit of a cheating type of answer because I basically get to combine all of the Prince's Nin beasts into one entry here. So this is just really cool. I love things that are varied and have a lot of different facets to it, and this obviously fits the bill. And also for this video, I'm not going to be giving like an in-depth explanation for each of these abilities. I've got videos on some of them already. This is one of them, for example. So if you're looking for that, check it out. And then for others of these abilities, I might make standalone videos, explaining them more in depth if that's something people want. Next up, I gotta go with Nov's hide and seek ability, and this is one of my favorites in the entire manga, and maybe because I'm a D&D guy, but I just love extra dimensional spaces, right? It's basically a bag of holding and yet also a magnificent mansion. So this one can just be used in so many cool different ways, and I'm sad that he kind of exited the story, but who knows, maybe he'll be back. And let's just go ahead and talk about Moral and his deep purple ability as well. This is one of the most versatile in the entire series. Like, he is the Swiss Army knife of Nin, basically being able to conjure whatever he needs out of this smoke and put it to use. The MVP of the Chimera Anarch. And let's just keep it rolling with that crew, because next up we've got Moral's pupil, Knuckle. And this is one of those abilities where I just realized Togashi got like hyper focused on something and decided to turn it into a shonen power, because APR and bankruptcy are like so nuanced, but it's so interesting. This is one of my favorites. Next, keeping in line with the super unique abilities, I gotta go with Kite's crazy slots, because I love any ability that has some interesting restrictions baked into it, and his obviously fits the bill. The way he just randomizes what weapon he's gonna get, and he must use that weapon. My only, bad thing I could say about it is that we just didn't get to see enough of it. I want to know what more of the numbers lead to, and obviously I want to know which one kind of led to his reincarnation, since that's the large implication of what happened there. Next up, I think Pakunoda's Psychometry and Memory Bomb are just really cool abilities. The way she can peer into people's memories, but more importantly, the way that she can share those memories with others or erase those memories in the original individual. And, I might be dipping more into my D&D brain here, but reminds me of Modify Memory, which is one of the coolest spells in D&D that has a bunch of really interesting use cases the more creative you can get. So I just really liked this. Next up, I gotta go with a more recent one in the manga, and that is Hinrigh's biohazard. And for those of you that don't remember, this is the one where he can transform inanimate objects into living things, into animals. So we saw him, turn guns into snakes. He turned this GPS tracker into an oyster in order to hide it in the Haley base. And this one just offers so much room for creativity that I love it, and I can't wait to see more from him. Now, this next one should come as no surprise to anyone and shouldn't really need much of an explanation, but Chrollo's Bandit Secret, the ability to steal other abilities, is obviously just always going to be cool. You have a whole stable of techniques to choose from, and his unique bookmark in conjunction with this is also a really cool way to build upon that idea. And while we're on the subject of Chrollo, the most recent stolen ability we saw him use, I think, is one of the most interesting we've seen in a minute. And that is this love connection conjured cell phone one, where he basically inputs like a certain set of data that he's looking for and then dials the number, and it helps guide him to somebody with those qualities. Just the amount of different ways you could use this is limitless, right? Because we know it was originally conceived of as like a dating app, basically, for somebody to find their perfect partner. But we know that Chrollo is using it in terms of trying to find a specific nin ability, or at least somebody to help him with his current goal. But that alone means that you can get pretty varied in what you actually use this for. So I really like this one. And since we talked about Chrollo, let's just go ahead and scratch off the other side of that coin with Kurapika. His Emperor Time and his chains are some of the coolest abilities in the series because he can do so many different things with them. And I've put out a few different videos diving into these, so I won't get into it here, and plus, you guys know about Kurapika by now. Next, I also wanted to include Leol's ability, and this one probably is more of an honorable mention, even though I haven't been making that delineation thus far, just because it's so similar to Bandit Secret, but I like that it is distinctly different in how it operates. The way he basically has to do a favor for somebody, and then he gets a limited use of their ability. So I just like how Togashi kind of dives into these same ideas in interesting ways. In keeping with the Chimera ants for a second, I also thought Cheeto's first ability was really cool. The one where he basically cast a domain expansion where they played tag for 8 hours. And I'm really curious as to what would have happened had somebody failed this, but we'll never know. And then to round out the Chimera ants I have on this list, I gotta mention Poof. And this is one I talked about in my most powerful and versatile list from a few days ago, so we won't get into it again. But just the amount of things he can do with this, not the least of which is granting other people nin abilities by putting them in a cocoon. This one is just ridiculous. And then speaking of giving other people nin abilities, I gotta go with Morena. And she was in my other list as well, but this one is one of my favorites because it's just so cool, right? Especially we've been finding out more about it. So might be some recency bias here, but just the way it ties into the negotiation card game and the way that your goals and Morena's goals have to align in order for this to really work. But not only that, just the way that she can kind of help dictate what ability her follower is going to get, which is why the negotiation game comes into play. That interview needs to happen. There's just a lot of thought put into this one, and that's not even to get into the way people actually level up once they're in it. Like, it's a video game, right? There's a point system. You get more points the more people you take out, and the stronger they are. If they're a prince, you get even more points, and ultimately you can create your own game and it can just go on exponentially. I really love when Togashi just goes deep in his bag with these like complicated, nuanced abilities. So yeah, this is probably my favorite of all of them, at least right now. And then finally, I gotta give a shout out to 4th Prince Tserriednich's Parallel Future, and Dave, of course. If you know, you know. But who doesn't love an ultra complicated ability every once in a while? Plus, we got time travel involved. What's not to love, right? And if you're interested in how this works, I do have a whole separate video. It's like 15 minutes long, I think, where we go super in depth explaining it. And that's where you can also find out about Dave. But yeah, I love this one. Anyways, I could probably keep going for forever. Godspeed is amazing. Guanyin Bodhisattva is awesome. There are a million cool abilities in Hunter x Hunter, but these are at least the most interesting to me from a design standpoint for now. But let me know y'all's favorites down below, especially if there's one I didn't mention here, because I'm sure there's some really interesting ones that I just straight up forgot about. So I would love to hear about it. Again, shout out to Carson for the sponsor video. Thank you so much, man, and thank you guys for watching.